Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa, Idris with me, Ibrahim, Sani.
Yes, there you are.
Last week, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia confirmed that Nur Fitri Azmeer Nordin is currently pursuing a PhD at the university. Now, in 2014, Nur Fitri was convicted of child pornography-related offences in Britain, and he was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. So this issue has generated huge debate about human rights, about second chances, and about Malaysia's child sexual offenders registry. So joining us on the line tonight, we have Robyn Choi, who's the former Secretary General of the National Human Rights Society, or better known as HAKAM. Good evening, Robyn. Thank you for joining us today. Now, I'd like to begin with looking at it from a human rights perspective. How should we be viewing the news that Nur Fitri is back in the country and is a student at UKM?
Well, let me start from the human rights perspective. It is the balancing of two sets of rights, or rather I should say the balancing of the rights of two groups of people. You have the first group, which are what I would call former offenders or ex-convicts, people not just Nur Fitri, but also the likes of Selva Kumar Subia, the returnee from Canada, if you recall. And the second group of persons which we ought to look at are in respect of the rights of safety, are those who are vulnerable, like children and women, but especially children, and the risk that they may face in I suppose, sexual abuse from persons who have been convicted and they are re-entry into society. For the first group, the former offenders, from a human rights viewpoint, they have the right to be free from harassment, ostracism, or even violence. The harassment and ostracism will impede their rehabilitation and re-entry into society. What we must remember, these are real people, people who have spent years, maybe decades of their lives locked up, and who are probably anxious to start over, but not quite know how to achieve it. They need some place to live. They need to continue either studying or to work. And they need counseling. Again, there are limited resources, and society isn't very kind to people in this category. That said, there are many courts overseas who have recognized that sexual offenders have a high rate of recidivism, and that is they are likely to be repeated offenders. So in the case of Nur Fitri and Selva Kumar, both of them were convicted overseas and has been found here.
Robyn, look, we know that the reason why we want to jail somebody and somebody goes to jail is because he or she owes a debt to society. Is that debt paid? Nur Fitri was sentenced to 5 years. He actually served 9 months. Is he deserving to live life as a free citizen, free of media adjudicating him post imprisonment sentencing?
Yes, he is free. He should be free to re-enter into society. He should be free of harassment and or basically either from media or on social media itself. He must be given the chance to start over. But yet at the same time, under the laws of Malaysia, the record of one person's crime will still remain. Of course, that is nobody's business except as provided under the law.
Okay, so I'd like to take a closer look, Robyn, at the Sexual Offences Against Children Act that came into force after Nur Fitri was convicted. He was convicted abroad and in 2015. So that was before the Act came into force here in Malaysia. Does that make a difference from a legal perspective in the way that we are treating a former convict like him?
Well, it depends on what you mean by how we are treating a former convict. The social media harassment and and to a certain extent, the media publication of and vilification of Nur Fitri is not right. And yet, at the same time, what most people have referred to as the Sexual Offenders Register, in fact, what it is called under the Child Act is the Register for Children.
So that register, that child registry, Robyn, can you explain a little bit about how it works? Now, it only came into force recently, just a few months ago, and I think a lot of people are still uncertain about what it is.
Okay, the Register for Children did not just come into effect. It was provided in the amendment in 2016 to the Child Act. They had in 1st of January 2017 created a Register of Children. That Register of Children, when it came into force in 1st of January 2017, had recorded and continued to record, I think, up to about 3 years of past convictions. So it doesn't, to me, it does not make any difference whether a person has been convicted abroad or before this year or 2016 or 17. What the Act provides, as it has been amended, says the Register of Children includes details of persons convicted of any offense in which a child is a victim. So there is no time set under the amendment to the Act. Secondly, the Register of Children is not just a sexual offenders registry. It is a register which contains details of persons convicted of any offense in which a child is a victim. So even for a child abuser or someone who has physically injured a child, they may have their name on that child register. So it's not just limited to sexual abusers, but I think that is at least on the top list of priority. So, but I will say that the Register of Children would also contain names of kidnappers, abductors, or even those who are involved in child trafficking.
Robyn, if we were to benchmark this against other countries that have rolled this out and currently implementing this, has any form of good come out from child registers? Does this actually prevent future abuses of children, at least from countries that have done this before?
Well, I can't say for other countries. I have only sketch reporting. From what I understand, how effective a register is depends on what is on that registry, the information it contains, and the people who are allowed access to it.
So who is allowed access to it, Robyn?
At this time, according to the Act, the persons who have access to it would be people who are child carers and minders, schools, even parents. As long as you have the obligation and responsibility to protect the child, and they are your responsibility, then you have the right to go to any of the welfare department and check if a certain someone that you are going to hire is on that list of registry for having been convicted of an offense which involves a child.
Are there privacy concerns? I mean, should the information on the registry be only accessible to, say, those with authorization, I guess, as a safety against abuses?
Well, there are safeties provided under the Child Act. It says that the information which is obtained cannot be furnished to another person other than for the very purpose of protecting a child. Or it cannot be furnished to any other person except by an order of court. So if someone were to get that information and decides to put it on social media, that person would be guilty of an offense under the Act, which carries a maximum fine of 10,000 and or 2 years of imprisonment. So there is that privacy which is protected under the Act, that you can only get the information or such information as is necessary to protect the children that you're looking after.
Robyn, you know, as a parent, I don't want individuals to come near me and near my children, particularly if he or she is found to be on the registry. That's me. I'm emotional. I'm a father. I want to protect.
Understandable.
Yeah, but you know, my emotions shouldn't supersede other people's rights, and in this sense, I am superseding, say, for instance, Nur Fitri and any other individuals' rights. How do you?
Well, I don't agree that you are actually superseding Nur Fitri's rights. You are just obtaining information. You are not harassing Nur Fitri. You are just protecting to make sure that you don't hire Nur Fitri to take care of your kids as a nanny.
Right. Oh. Robyn, that
you are entitled under the law.
You know, this I guess entire news has generated such debate and conversation on social media. I'd really like to get your perspective, Robyn. What do you think, what would you like people to understand about this issue that is perhaps not part of the current narrative?
Well, I suppose we need to understand, I think community and the public need to understand the existence of this register alone is not going to solve child abuse or sexual offences against children. It takes parents, generally all childminders, to be vigilant. In fact, statistics have shown that since the registry has been up, there's not many people who have actually even bothered to check or get information as to whether or not the person they're hiring to mind a school or to teach in any volunteering activity has been involved in any offences involving children. And so, we have cases where, like the case of Richard Huckle, yes, he was convicted in the UK after he was found to have abused Malaysian kids and Cambodian children. And if he had a record, his name should have been on that register, and churches who allow him access to children should or ought to have checked that register and will not allow him the opportunity to be a teacher or a counselor to children because of the risk involved. And as far as children are concerned, under the Child Act as well as under International Convention, children have the right to be protected. They have a right to safety. And that is the responsibility of not just parents, but the community at large.
Right. Truly, it takes a village to raise a child. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Robyn. That was Robyn Choi of the National Human Rights Society, better known as HAKAM. Now, we will be back in just a few minutes. Stay tuned to Consider This.